All right, guys, I am coming to you with a little bit of a different video. I've been getting a lot of requests on giving more information about financial freedom, how that relates to kids, how investments and some of those things work, and how you can keep this process of investing and building lifetime financial kids that turn into adults that are responsible and are able to live abundant lives. And so I wanted to give a recap of something we've just implemented a couple of years ago. Man, before how long ago? Probably 15 years ago. I went to an event and there were some speakers, and it was Richard and Linda Eyre. And one of the things that they spoke about is they had like 10 kids, and they talked about all these challenges with kids and how to do things. They ended up on Oprah. They've written several books, but one of the books that they wrote has been their bestseller and is the one that I really gravitated to. Actually, there's two books. There's another one, but this is the first one. This is called The Entitlement Trap. It talks about these ideas of successful people or people that want to give their kids a better life than they may have had, and how that can actually hurt the kids rather than helping the kids because it's teaching the wrong principles. So I have this little theory that it's in every other generational problem, right? So you have somebody that struggles, learns how to work, learns how to save, learns how to budget, learns how to invest. But it took a lot of work and it took a lot of effort. And they feel like what's the best thing they can do for their kids is to not have to have them go through that effort. But the problem is going through the effort is what made them who they are. And so if they do not allow their kids to go through those same experiences, then their kids are going to feel entitled. Their kids are just going to want more and more and more. They're not going to learn the fundamental things that made this person successful is not going to transfer to the next generation. The fact of the matter is you want them to do the things you had to go through, but maybe not to the severity. You want them to be able to understand those principles and become that type of person. And so this book helps you actually go through making that a reality. Okay, so here's a copy of the book. It's The Entitlement Trap. It's on Audible. It's on, you can buy a physical copy, Kindle, whatever the case is. But I'll give you an overview of what that is and what that actually looks like. This is what we call, my last name is Wright, so this is our Wright Economy Overview and Rules. So this is kind of, the book spurred us on to some of these concepts and ideas, but we are the ones that put this together, and you are welcome to get a copy of this and make it your own, right? There's no right or wrong way to do this. It's going to be different for every family. There's not like really strict rules, but there are a few things that we've learned through the process that I think is really, really helpful. And one of the things that's interesting is there'll be nights where I'm ready to go to bed and I will hear my kid doing dishes downstairs at 10 o'clock at night or 10:30 at night when I'm ready to go to bed, and it's a little bit noisy and I want to go to bed, but it's amazing that they're down there doing dishes and I don't have to remind them. I don't have to talk to them. They just know that's just what they do because they want to be able to buy things. So this is the general overall concept. It is that you are entitling your kids, which becomes a major problem if you're just giving them things. And so rather than giving them things, they need to earn things. And a story that we've seen time and time again, my son, he needed to clean his room out. This is before we started this whole process. And so what did he do? He took a bunch of clothes, he threw them in the hallway and said, "Mom, none of these fit. We just need to get rid of them." Okay, interesting. Well, when my wife started looking at those, she's like, all these fit. This just needs to get washed. This needs to get this needs to get that. Well, the fact of the matter is that right before that happened, we were just reading this book and we're like, okay, we have to do this. Because the reality is very few of those didn't fit and very few of those actually needed to go away. But because there was no ownership in those things, there was no responsibility. And where there was no responsibility, there was no care or love or diligence around these things because they had nothing invested in these things. In the book, it gives an example of one of the kids taking a shoe and floating it down on a rainy day, and it ends up making its way into the gutter and then down into the, I don't know what you call it, the sewer system or whatever the case is, and losing it. And they came home and he's like, "What happened to your shoe?" It's like, "Oh, we did this." And he's like, "Well, what are you going to do?" He's like, "Oh, Mom's just going to buy another one," right? So it was just this expected, which is kind of like this entitlement type trap that you can get into. And it's like, well, I want my kids to have shoes. But I want my kids to have ownership of those things, so they take better care of them. They know where they're at. They make it work. They're making decisions. And that's one of the most interesting things with this is kids now have options and have choices with this, and they're able to decide what's most important to them and where they want to spend their money. It also has them learning how to budget. It has them learning how to invest. It has them learning how to forecast, and all this can be done at a very, very young age. I would probably say 8, maybe even a little bit younger, but somewhere between 8 and 15. I'd say it can go through high school as well. I think it will for us, but those are kind of the optimal ages. The basic concept here is you take the money that you are currently spending for your kids, and rather than spend it, you allow them to earn it. And then they are responsible for buying the things that they need or they want. Let me say this one more time, because a lot of people don't understand this. You go through and say, how much am I currently spending a year on my kids? What am I spending it for activities? What am I spending it for going to the movies? What am I spending for, you name it? Like, what are we spending money on? Clothes, basketballs, whatever the case is. Like, how much are we spending? And then you take that amount and determine how much that is per child. And then rather than you going and spending that money, you give them the ability to go earn that money by doing things. And then they are responsible to then buy the things that they want. They get to make their own decisions. They get to decide. Now, there are some rules around that. And I'm going to show you some of our family rules and how that works, because the family law, the rules or the family law oversees everything, right? It's kind of like the governing law oversees even somebody's personal preference. So the idea is you can't break a law, but you have all other decisions that you can make. And we call it rules, not laws. In the book, they talk about calling them laws. And so we call them rules, and we can add and modify to these rules as things happen, as things change, as our kids get older. And so we have a big disclaimer that all this is subject to change. So the foundational idea is having ownership of things, clothes, basketballs. I mean, how many bikes do you see that are left out? How many scooters do you see that are in the rain? How many, you name it, it's there. And the reason is because there's this entitlement that, like, I'll just get another one, because there's not an understanding of the effort necessary. The second thing that I found really interesting with this is that it's been super motivating. My kids are excited about earning this money. Now, when we first rolled this out, I had 2 different reactions. I've got 2 boys. One basically lost it, started crying on the floor and said, "I'm going to be broke. I'm never going to have any money. I'm not going to be able to do anything. I'm not going to be able to buy the stuff that I need." I'm, like basically a complete meltdown. The other one was like interesting, but skeptical, like, that's interesting. Tell me more. But skeptical. But now, having done this for a couple of months, they're both excited. They both love it, other than they complain once in a while because they're like, why do I have to pay for my haircuts when my friends' parents pay for their haircuts? And my answer, which my wife doesn't love, is, I feel sorry for your friend because his parents don't love him. And I say that tongue in cheek, but the idea is they are building an entitlement person that's like, hey, the money's always there. It's not a problem. I don't understand how I earn it, those types of things. Now, I say that facetiously, but I actually do mean, and so there is going to be some backlash along like, why do I have to pay for this stuff? All my other friends don't. And then we go back and say, well, you have the ability to make all this money and your friends don't have the ability to do that. And if you make that money and you invest or save, we match some of that, which I'll get into here in just a minute. So that's the underlying. Let me show you. This is our family economy rules also could be referred to by as laws, okay? So the first problem that we kind of ran into, and I don't think the book really addresses this, and that is if the things they have to do are optional to earn the money, what about the things that they need to do, okay? So the concept here was like, well, okay, we're gonna pay them to do things, but if they don't wanna do them, then these things never get done. Yes, we don't pay, but they never get done. So what we basically said is there are chores you have to do because you're a member of the household, okay? You have to do it when asked, there's no complaining, but we try and really limit those chores. The chores that we've limited those to is like cleaning the kitchen, cleaning your room, doing that type of stuff. The fewer as possible for these chores, the better, in my opinion. So you want to have as few chores as possible, but I also don't want to create another behavior where I'm asking them to help me do something. They're like, how much are you going to pay me for that? So the idea is, hey, we're going to ask you to do some stuff. We're going to keep that more minimal, but we are going to ask you and we expect you to do it, and we don't want you to say how much and that type of stuff, okay? Other things, we're going to tell you how much it is. So if we come and say, we'll pay this for something, then we'll pay that. If not, we expect you to do it, and we expect you to do it without complaining. So that's kind of the first principle or the first rule or law in all of this. The second one is you can ask why once, and I will do my best to explain it. You can't ask again, and you cannot complain. If complaining happens, your payout will be reduced or eliminated, okay? So the idea with this was, it's like, okay, I need you to do this. Okay, why do I have to go do this? And it's like, because as a family, we're gonna clean the garage together and we're gonna do this. And it's like, well, how much are you gonna pay me? We're not gonna pay you, we're doing this as a family. So then we get some complaining, and then we get some, well, I don't wanna do that, and I should get paid, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, hey, that's your first warning. We are gonna do this as a family. It's not something you're getting paid out on. And if the complaining continues, then I'm gonna make a reduction to other payouts that they may be getting for that week because of the attitude and those things. So, because we don't want our kids just saying, how much you can pay me for that with everything. We do want them to do some things as a family or working together and that type of stuff without being quote unquote paid for that, okay? Now, the other thing that we get into is some of these policies, okay? If we have to remind them or we have to ask them, they don't get paid. So the concept with this is, I don't wanna have to nag the kids. My wife doesn't wanna have to nag the kids. Put your shoes up, do your laundry, do this, clean up the kitchen, blah, 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 blah. So we don't talk about it. Once a week, we print out the sheets, which I'll show you. They know what those things are. They know what they're getting paid for those. It's by the day, and as they get things done, or at the end of the day, they ask for us to look at it or do an inspection. We sign off on it, and then we have payday. And payday is once a week. And that one time a week, they earn money daily, but they get paid out once a week. And then when they get paid out, that's when we kind of get into budgeting and those types of things. Now, so you may be saying, you know, this is way too advanced for my kids. This is too much. You are completely wrong. Like, not only is it what they need, it is what's going to make them better people, better money management. If you look at the number one cause of divorce and financial problems, all that type of stuff, money has an integral part of everything that we do, and this will give your kids the best footing in moving forward, okay? So some of the policies are, if we have to remind you, you don't get paid. There is no complaining, right? So if we have some complaining, you're not gonna get paid on that item, and other things can get reduced. You're earning it daily, but you're getting paid weekly. The other thing we talk about here is it's gotta be 100% done, okay? 90% done does not count. I talk about this a lot with real estate. I talk a lot about this with contractors, where I'm like, hey, if you have a faucet in, but the faucet is leaking, but everything else is done, that is not a completed item, okay? That doesn't count. A completed item is, it is 100% done, done. It works, it doesn't need anything, and that's the same thing we do with these chores is, we're only gonna pay out if it's 100% done. 90% doesn't count. If you do 90% and don't do the final 10%, you get zero, okay? So we wanna make sure that we're finishing the task, we're doing those types of things. Next is quality control. So although we don't want to have to remind them or ask them and those types of things, quality control is really important for us, because what happens is if you don't inspect it, people respect what you inspect. And if that's not happening, the quality goes down and it gets worse and it gets worse. At first, we weren't as hard on this, and we saw the quality just getting worse and worse and worse because they know no one was going to look at it. And now we've made it a requirement that we need to do an inspection. Now, occasionally do we skip an inspection? Yes, but that's not something that's happening all the time. We're really trying to, look at that when it gets done to make sure it's done to the quality that it should be in order. Now, let's say that we do that inspection and it's not there. This is where training comes in. So we're saying, hey, you know what? Let me show you how to do this because this wasn't done right. I'll do it with you. But next time I expect you to have that right. I mean, we learned all kinds of things like how the kids were doing the dishes or putting the laundry in, or, all this stuff. We're like, oh, no, that's not exactly how to do that. We had a lot of assumptions, how to vacuum, this type of stuff. And it's not like they haven't done it before, but in the past it was like, hey, go vacuum the hallway, and they go up there and kind of vacuum it and it looks okay. And we say, okay, fine. But now we're saying we're paying you for this. So the idea is, if you don't want to do it, we'll pay somebody else to do it. And so luckily, we've got lots of other kids in the neighborhoods that would love to come and do these things and get paid for that. And so it's easy for us to say, well, if you don't want to, I'll just call the neighbor kid and he can come do it. No, I want to do it. So those are the type of conversations. But I would say that the quality control, that is something that's an ongoing. At first, we got a little too strict on that. I think the better way is do the quality control, but use that as an education and a teaching moment. You can talk to Matt here, who's in charge of our loan department. And one of the things he talks about frequently is the EDGE methodology. It's something that I think the Boy Scouts came up with, but it's educate, demonstrate, guide, and I changed the last one to empower. But educate is teaching. This is how you do it, okay? Demonstrating is you do it and they watch it. Guiding them is they do it and you watch them. And then empowering is giving them the things they need to do it, which would be making sure they have a vacuum or whatever the case is for that. That's kind of the process. Now, if we've gone through that process and they're not doing a good job, then it's probably time to start saying, well, maybe we should give this to somebody else, or we'll give it to another kid, or whatever the case is. Are you serious? Do you really want this? We're not seeing those. And we'll give chances and, talk and conversation. This is not like to fire your kid. It's to teach them. Like, this is not about how they can make the most amount of money. This is how they can make money and take on responsibility and have ownership. And it is an amazing thing to help with our kids. Okay. The other thing, and we're very upfront with this, is tasks are subject to change. As you get older, more will be added, and payment amounts will change as well, okay? Because the amount that I'm gonna pay a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old to do a toilet or clean the bathroom or whatever the case is gonna be a lot different than what I might be paying a 16-year-old, but I'm also gonna have different quality control requirements for the 16-year-old versus the 5-year-old. And so what I pay for one kid to do something is not the same as what I pay another kid. And as they get older, I'm going to make those changes, and they need to realize that. The other thing that's really important for us, we don't like to work on Sundays, do our best not to do those types of things. And so we've said, hey, you can't quote unquote earn money on Sundays, but you can, clean the kitchen and do some of those things that are requested by parents, but it's not a day for you to go like earn money. We don't want to be working on Sunday. Personal preference, religious religious reasons for that. That may be for you. It may not be for you. There might be another day that's for you. It may be you want the family to all be together, not doing stuff on a certain evening. So it's like you can't do these things on Thursday night or whatever the case is. Again, you adapt this for what you want to do and what's going to help your family. Next, spending the money. Yes, we do break down how the money needs to be spent, okay? So 10% needs to go to charity, giving, or tithing. For us, We do the tithing, so whatever that is, because we want them to see the value, earn it, give it to other people. There's a lot that happens and a lot of great things that happen in lives that are helped drastically through charity and giving and contribution. And it's important that we keep things in perspective. I think if you lose gratitude, you've lost everything. And so this is a way to keep that gratitude. One of the things we like to do also is some help with some Christmases and go shopping and some of that type of stuff. So those are some other things. We should probably talk about that at a later date as well. Now, number 2, and this is really important, 20% has to be saved or invested. Okay, save/invest is the same thing to us. 20%, okay, 10% goes to charity, give, tithe, 10% goes to charity, give, tithe, 20% goes to investing. Okay, now that leaves 70% left. With that 70%, they can do what they want with it. Okay. But then we ran into this issue as like, whoa, they're not going to buy church clothes, or they're not going to buy a coat, or they're not going to buy underwear, or whatever the case is. Now, a couple of ways to deal with that. One way is birthdays and Christmases and, maybe little holidays, you're going to buy them, some of those types of things. That's something, but you don't want that to be replacing what they're doing. It should be for like a birthday or for a holiday type, or I should say birthday or Christmas. So what we then said is there's some requirements here. First requirement is you cannot purchase animals. I don't want to come home and there's a dog, because we already have a dog, but I don't want them to feel like, hey, it's my money, I can do anything I want with this. I don't want to have more animals in the house. And it's not because I don't like my dog. He's rather grown on me, but we don't want to have extra animals. Maybe that's a big deal for you. Maybe it's not. Maybe, but I would say think through this animal thing. Like, are you okay with fish? Are you okay with this? Are you not okay with that? Like, make sure you know what you're getting into and outline that, because I really want them to say, hey, I can do what I want with this 70%. I want to give some boundaries around that and let them play within those. And for us, it's you can't buy animals. Okay, next, for us, you've got to be responsible for paying. We have a dress code at our school that we go to, and so our kids need to have certain clothing for school. So what we said is, hey, you've got to have 5 pants, you got to have 5 shirts, you got to have the sweater, you've got to have qualified shoes. Those are the types of things that you need to have for school. Okay, you've got to pay for that, and you've got to have this number. If you don't have this number and they don't fit, then you're required to buy more of those. But that's a requirement. You do not have a choice. You have to spend that out of your 70%. Okay, next, you are required to pay for haircuts. Now for us, we have some school standards on that, so we added that. You may not. Maybe you have some personal standards you want to hold up to. That's all up to you. I actually don't really care about what my kids want to do with their hair. I want them to feel like that's a great way to express themselves. But the school has some standards that we have to adhere to, unfortunately, or I probably wouldn't even put this on here. The other thing for us, and this could be different for everybody, is we require our kids to have church clothes. So they've got to have at least one white shirt, a tie, a suit, and church shoes. Now those can be the same shoes potentially that they are wearing to school based upon a dress-up day or whatever the case is. But they pay for that. They buy that, but this is required. We also require clothing. You have to have a coat. Okay, you have to have a coat. Now, I don't care if you go to a thrift store and buy a coat, or if you want to go to North Face and buy a coat. That's fine with me, but the option is not, I'm not going to have a coat because my kids are going to get sick and we're going to have this. It's just irresponsible. No, you have to have a coat and you're going to have to buy a coat. Okay, and part of these things are going to help our kids budget and learn and have value and be excited about the things they're buying and take really, really good care of them. That's one of the things that I noticed is once my son bought his pair of shoes, not only were the shoes not thrown all over the floor and everything, they were cleaned regularly and they were on a shelf, and he even put a light on it to shine onto them because they look cool because he took so much great care of them, and he wanted to make sure he could display them. So those are the types of changes you start to see. Next thing you're going to see, we require socks, we require shoes. You have to have a pair of sandals because we want to go to the beach or the pool or something like that. So you have just one pair of sandals. I don't care what they look like, but they've got to be a pair of sandals. Basketball shoes. They've got to buy their own basketball shoes. Gloves, underwear, shirts, shorts, all that type of stuff. One of the things I noticed with this is at our office, we'll do shirts and that type of stuff. And so I usually always get a shirt for my kids just because I want to. And in the past, they weren't very grateful for that. Now when I come home with a shirt that has our logo or whatever on it, they are like ecstatic because they're like, this is a free shirt. This is awesome. I'm so excited. Thanks, Dad. It's a different perspective, right? Because they understand the cost of going out and buying a shirt. Basketball, sports gear, and accessories, they're responsible for all of that. So if they're going to play soccer, they got to go buy soccer cleats. School supplies, backpacks, pens, papers, markers, all that type of stuff. Whatever the school requires of them, they are responsible for paying. Now remember, we took the money we were already spending and we are giving that to them and saying, these are the things you're required to do. I'm already spending money on those things. Now, let's say they want to buy a used backpack instead of a new backpack. Their choice. Let's say they want to buy a really expensive backpack. Their choice, right? They have to abide by these rules or laws, but beyond that, it's really up to them. They're responsible for all of their own electronics. I'll address cell phones a little bit later because we do some interesting things with cell phones. They are responsible for their own bike. They're responsible for their own gas for the car. They're responsible for their own cell phone bill. And for us, we use a management system called Pinwheel, so we want to make sure that it's approved on that, or they can't have it. We actually help contribute to the cell phone bill, or excuse me, to buying a cell phone. I'll show you how that works here in just a minute. They also need money for entertainment. If they go for food, if they go for movies, if they want to go to Airborne or they want to go bowling or whatever the case is, they are responsible for paying that. Well, guess what? They're going to enjoy it better. They're going to know what it costs. They're going to have an appreciation for it. And when I take them bowling, they're going to be really grateful. The next thing is toys, like Legos, Nerf guns, all that type of stuff. You're responsible for that. When you go on vacation, you're responsible for buying whatever you want on vacation. If you want to buy a shirt, buy a shirt. I'm not going to buy you a shirt. So those are some changes, right? Also, presents for other people. Like when you have a friend party, you're going to be the one buying that gift. That's going to come out of your money, and you're going to decide. And for Christmas or Mother's Day or whatever the case is, you're going to decide how much and you're going to decide what it is. One of the cool things I've seen with this is the boys are getting a little bit more creative in writing a note or giving a letter or something like that, which has turned out to be more meaningful, which has been pretty cool. Okay. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, and this is where my kids get really excited. And this is the savings or investment match. What this basically means is I will match what they put in their savings and investments. So if they put in $100, maybe I'm going to match it at 10%. I'm going to put in $10, okay? So I put in a certain percentage of what they put in when they put the money in. But this is only for the savings and investment account. But the caveat is, once the money is in there, your portion, the kids' portion, and my match, it can only come out for 4 reasons, okay? 1 is a car, 2 is college, 3 is for a house, and 4 is for approved investments. Investments mean we're growing the money. We put this in a high yield savings account. We do take some of that money and do loans with that. If that's something that they want to do, that's something they can do. We approve those. But that's the only way. Really, spending the investments isn't really spending the money, it's investing in the money. So there's really 3 things: car, college, and house. That's what that money can be used for and nothing else. So if my son puts money in that account and then spends all of his money and wants to go out to the movies with his friends, it's like, well, I have money in the savings. It's like, no, you don't. That money is only for 3 things: car, college, and a house. That is it. It does not come out for any other reason whatsoever. So then it's like, well, geez, Mom and Dad, you're not going to pay for anything then. Yeah, we actually are. We're going to pay for family activities. If we're doing something as a whole family, we're going to be paying for that. If we're going out to dinner as a family, we're going to pay for that. Now, occasionally I'll do a one-on-one with one of my kids, and I'm going to pay for those things too. But if we're not together as a family and it's not an intentional, pre-planned one-on-one situation where I'm going out with just one of my sons to go do some things, and we planned on that and kind of a date night type of an idea, daddy night, I will pay for that, but I'm very cautious about what we do because I don't want to overdo it in those things, because I want to make sure that there's still the gratitude. Or if my wife wants to take one of my sons to lunch and picks him up from school and takes him to lunch, yes, we're going to pay for that because that's intentional. It's one-on-one, those types of things. We'll pay for vacations, all the vacations. We'll pay for all of that. You don't have to contribute. You pay for activities with friends. Anything they're doing with friends, they're responsible for that. Now, then they got into this whole issue of like, well, if there's some things I want my kids to do that if they had to pay, they probably wouldn't. One of those things for me is like a church camp or a high adventure or, a girls camp or, something like that. And so we said we will pay for those types of camps because we want them to be there and we don't want to discourage them from not going because they don't want to spend the $20 or $30 or whatever. So we said, hey, we're going to take care of that. Next thing for us is we believe in charity. We believe in mission service. So we're going to pay 100% of missions and necessary expenses. If they want to do that, service mission, church mission, whatever the case is, we're going to pay for that. Next, we will pay for approved sports, tournaments, clubs, and required uniforms. This one was a little bit difficult, but here's what it came down to. One of my sons likes to play basketball, but if he had to pay for those stupid uniforms that are ridiculously expensive, he would not play basketball, even though he loves to play basketball, because he would be like, that is way too much. It's highway robbery. I'm not going to spend the money on that. But the problem is we want him to have these experiences. We want him to be on a team. We want him to associate with others. We want him to have the camaraderie. We want him to make friends. Those types of things are great. So we want to promote that. So we are going to pay for tournaments, activities, uniforms, as long as you participate and finish the full season you signed up for, which basically means if you're going to start, you have to finish. You can't quit in the middle, even if you hate it or anything else. You have to finish. So you're making a commitment to finish that season or what you signed up for. And secondly, if you're blowing off practices or you're not going to it and those types of things, guess what? Now you get to pay for that. You get to pay for the uniform. You get to pay for the tournament. You get to pay for those things. If you don't want to do that, actively participate and finish the season. And if you don't want to do that again, no problem. You're like, hey, basketball's not for me. I want to try something else. Awesome. We'll do that. Not a problem, but you have to finish the season and you have to be an active participant for the time that you're actually in there. Next thing I want to talk about here is cell phones, okay? This controversy, how do you handle cell phones? What do you do with kids? There's all kinds of stuff around that. What we're doing is we pay for 51% of their cell phone. The reason that we do that is we have majority ownership, so we control it. They pay 49%, we pay 51%. They cannot go buy a cell phone on their own that is their cell phone. The cell phone is, we have majority ownership, but I also want them to have some participation and put money into that, so they pay 49%. We have some responsibilities where the phone has to be put in our bedroom at night to charge. They can't have it in their night after 9 o'clock. A buddy of mine says the cell phone has to remain in the kitchen, which I really like. So he's like, do whatever you want on the cell phone, but it's in the kitchen, a certain place, and it's plugged in. Kind of like the home phone idea before the cordless phones and that type of stuff came out. Like there was one phone, it was in the living room or whatever, the kitchen, and unless you could stretch your cord into the bathroom to try and have a private conversation, it really wasn't going to happen. That's the type of environment that my buddy likes. I think it's a good idea. I'm going to be speaking to my wife about it tonight. So cell phone, we own 51%, they own 49%, but they pay for their own cell phone service. Okay, so they're paying for their package or their plan. That is up to them. And if they want to get on a different plan or they want to go to a different provider, those are all decisions that they get to make. Now, for us, and you don't have to follow these same percentages. I would recommend that you have majority, but this is all up to you. You can customize this for what works. But remember, we're taking money that we're already spending and we're dividing that up so that they can go and buy these things. Car purchase. For us, I know a lot of people give a car, have a junker, borrow mom and dad's, whatever the case is. We actually want to teach responsibility. We actually want our kids to have a car. We want them to use it. So we are going to pay for 51% of their car, okay? So for their car purchase, we are going to pay 51% of that, which again, is the same reason. We want majority ownership. So they have to pay for gas. They have to pay for maintenance and repairs. They have to pay for, or there's a curfew, so I'm going to put curfews on there. One of the things that I haven't decided yet, because I'm not there, is car insurance. Who's paying for that insurance? The reason why I think that gets into a little bit of trouble is I want them to be able to drive. I want them to be able to, take my son to class or school or whatever the case is. So those are some things that you just have to think about, but keep in mind, everything on our family economy rules is subject to change, so we can make some changes, but it's obviously best if we can get it right the first time. Next thing we're going to talk about is college. Okay, so what we've decided to do is we're going to cover a certain percentage of their bachelor's degree, but it has to be in-state. So whatever the cost of that bachelor's degree for in-state, we're going to cover a certain percentage of that, and we expect them to cover a certain percentage of that if they want to go get a bachelor's degree. Now, let's say they get in and want to go to Harvard. No problem. That's awesome. We will still cover our percentage of what a bachelor's degree for in-state tuition would be. Because out-of-state tuition, those things get ridiculously expensive. And we're basically saying, hey, we will give we'll pay a certain portion of your bachelor's degree, and you're gonna cover this. Now, there's a lot of different thoughts on this. Some people are like, well, I'm just gonna pay for my kid's college because I want them to go, or I don't want my kid to have to be worried about that, or they're not gonna go if I don't pay for it. It's back to the entitlement trap for me. I do want my kids to have a bachelor's degree for a lot of reasons, but I don't want to pay for all of that. I want them to contribute, and they will be better students. They will get more out of it. They'll take it more seriously, all those things. Now, here's the cool thing though. If they get scholarships, the money can be used for other degrees or can be used for living expenses. So whatever percentage I'm gonna cover, let's say that they get a scholarship and it covers a lot of that, well, then they can take that money and actually use it for living expenses. So I separate college into two. You've got the cost of the school and the books and those types of things, and then you've got the living expenses, housing, food, transportation, those types of things. I separate those. So the bachelor's degree is just the cost that you're paying in the school and paying for books. Living expenses is pretty much everything else. So we have decided that we're gonna pay a certain portion of living expenses, right? So we're gonna pay this much in living expenses. Again, we're gonna estimate that for in-state schools, in-state school living expenses, not some expensive, ridiculous place. But I also want them to contribute a portion of that living expenses as well. Those are percentages that you've got to decide with your significant other, your spouse, and decide what those look like and what you're able to do, what you want to do. Those are things that you can be looking at as well. But again, if they get a scholarship, then they can take that money I would have paid towards the bachelor's degree and put it towards the living expense. I'll still pay the portion of living expense, but that will reduce the portion of living expense they need to do. Or they can save that money and they can actually put that money in for a master's degree or a doctorate or whatever the case is. I'm not a huge fan of those, but I am a fan of getting a bachelor's degree. That's a conversation for a whole other day. And if you want to know why, I know I'm going to have some comments saying, why bachelor's degree, why this, blah, blah, blah. And I was actually anti-college when I was a kid. And anyway. Okay, next thing. I like to participate things as a family, okay? So I like to go skiing, I like to go snowmobiling, I'd like to do those things. So my kids are not gonna be excited if they have to buy skis and boots and helmets and bindings to go skiing with me, okay? So I'm gonna buy those things because I want them to go skiing with me, and if I don't buy them, they're not gonna wanna go skiing because they're not gonna wanna spend a couple $100 on that equipment. So I'm going to pay for that. I'm also gonna pay for ski passes when it's related to a family activity. If they're going with me, if they're going with the family, yes. If they're gonna go with their friends, that's on their own. All of this is subject to change at any time without notice, okay? Okay, so then what happens, and I'll show you what they fill out every week. I'll show you that type of stuff. But once a week we have Payday, okay? We do that on Sundays. It just works out best for us, although we don't want our kids working on Sundays. This is about education and training and tutoring and loving and all those types of things. And so we do the Payday, we talk through it, we do one-on-ones. I help them with the budgeting. My wife is the banker and helps them with that. We move money into different places. We talk about some investments. That's all part of what we like to do as a family. So then what happens is they get the money, okay? With that money, they then have to put the 10% into giving, tithing. They have to put 20% into savings, and then the rest of it is up to them. Well, what we've kind of worked out is different categories. So we have binders that we've put together, and they have 11 different categories. It's kind of like the envelope system. Category 1 is tithing. Category 2 is saving. Category 3 is school clothes. Number 4 is church clothes. Number 5 is regular clothes. Number 6 is entertainment. Number 7 is gifts, friends, birthdays, Christmas. Number 8 is phone bill, cell phone bill. Number 9 is school supplies. Number 10 is haircuts. And number 11 is leftover or future big purchases. Maybe they want to save up for a bike. Maybe they want to save up for a game. Maybe they want to save up for whatever. They're going to put it in there. However, they have to do 10% for giving, tithing, charity, and 20% in their savings. The other 70% is based upon these categories. So one of the things that was really challenging for our kids was to understand what the costs of these things were, because they didn't know what these things cost. So the next step for us was to put a budget together for them. And with that budget, we basically said, how much are you gonna spend this year for these items? Okay, so I'll give you an example. I'm gonna use church clothes just because I think that's gonna be the easiest. But before I do that, I want to show you. Okay, so what I did is I went and bought these, and yes, I paid for them because I knew they wouldn't buy them if I didn't. So I bought one of these. Okay, what this is a place they can put gift cards. It's got little zippers, and they can put their different categories into here and put their cash into here. One of the great things about this is they are keeping their money at our house, and then they'll take the money out that they want for something. So savings is going to go into a bank or an investment. Tithing, they're going to be giving that away or giving. And then the rest of that money, they're budgeting. So when they need the money, they're going to have it. They keep that at the house. And then when they go spend it, they're going to take money out of that envelope, and then they're going to go and buy that, or we'll buy it and then they'll use that money to pay us as soon as we get home, okay? We just wanna make sure they have the money. One of the things I was talking about here, these are called budget sheets. This was one of the big things that surprised me is our kids really didn't understand the cost of things. So like I said, I'm gonna use this church clothes example because my wife had just recently bought both my boys new suits and a white shirt and shoes before we started this system, okay? So they're probably not gonna need another one of those for a year, let's say, or 9 months, 8 months, whatever the case is. So what we had to do is said, okay, kids, how much are you gonna spend on a suit? How much are you gonna spend on a tie? How much are you gonna spend on this? Do you wanna go to a thrift store to get it? Do you wanna go to Nordstrom's to get it? Where do you wanna spend it? So then we would get online and say, okay, what type of quality do you want? If you wanna buy a big snazzy suit from Nordstrom's, that's awesome. That's exciting. We wanna help you, that's great. Let's go do it. Let's spend your money. Or if you say, you know what, I wanna go to a thrift store and buy it, as long as it's presentable, that's fine with us too. So what happens is they have these budget sheets. And what we did is we decided for each one of those categories, I'll jump back to my categories here. We decided how much money do they need per year for each one of these categories. Not savings and investments because that's a percentage, but how much are they gonna spend in school clothes? Okay, so for the year, they're gonna spend, I don't know, $300 on school clothes, $500 on school clothes, whatever it is. For church clothes, they're gonna spend this, for other clothes. So we had to go through each one of these and say, how much are you gonna spend a year? Which really depends on how nice of stuff they want. Like I've got one son that's gonna spend a lot of money on shoes because he really likes shoes, but he's not gonna spend a lot of money on entertainment because he doesn't really care about that as much. Great, that's his choice. It's helping him be responsible and him getting what he wants. So what are these, how much we're gonna spend? That was the next step we had to do, is how much we're gonna spend a year on these. Then what we had to do is say, okay, now that we know how much we're gonna spend, how soon are we going to need to spend it? So for example, with the church clothes, they're not gonna need to spend that for 12 months. So if they put $30 in every single month and it's $360 by the end of the year, they're gonna have enough to buy the church clothes if they needed $360 for church clothes for that type of stuff. However, something else is school clothes. School is only a couple of months away for us, so they're gonna need more money to put in over the next couple of months, so they'll have enough when it comes time to school clothes shop. However, once they spend that money to school clothes shop, then they will take that, divide it by 12 and put that much in every single month or every single time they actually get some money. Now, that's what led us. So after we made a determination of how much they wanted to spend, so we looked at clothes, we looked at this, we looked at that, we put a budget together for the year, then we made a determination as to when that would need that money, then we made a determination as to how much they're gonna be putting in there on a monthly basis. You can also do that on a weekly basis. Every week I'm gonna put X number of dollars in there, which makes it a little bit easier if you're paying on a weekly basis. That's the next step to all of this. Okay, so what's happening is, as they earn the money, they're gonna put the date, they're gonna say they earned the money, and they're gonna put how much it was, and then they're gonna tally that way. But if they do entertainment, they go out to the movies, they're gonna say, hey, this week I went to the movies and I spent money on this, and they're gonna subtract it so they have a running total, which helps them actually understand where they're spending their money and where it is going. And we have one of these budget sheets for each one of the categories so that they can write that down. So at the top, they're saying, I need $500 a year. I'm gonna spend it by this date, so I need to put this much a month or a week in so I can have enough with that. Now, once that comes, then I can adjust it down to this lower amount. And we sat and went through that. I would say that was probably the biggest hesitation or worry for my sons, is they didn't understand what that looked like. So how much we were paying them didn't translate because they didn't know what it was gonna cost. Those were a bunch of things. And once we did that, that was very, very helpful. And so both of them have this. We got some extra one of these envelope things. Then what happens is mom's the banker, right? So mom's got one of these little safes. We went to the bank and we got some money, and don't worry, the money circulates because we'll give them money and then they'll put that in savings or tithing or whatever the case is, and then they'll give that back to us, and then we'll use that money to give back to them, but then we'll take money out of our account and transfer that over to whatever they're doing. So it helps circulate the money so you don't have to have as much cash. I will tell you, you do need a lot of different denominations here. Lots of ones and fives and tens and 20s and some hundreds, but you need lots of different ones because some of the chores you may pay $2 for, and you may pay $5 for, you may pay, whatever that case is, you need to be able to pay them out in the exact increments. So be ready to have change, but it will slow down the amount of times you have to go to the bank. However, worst case, if you had to go to the bank a couple times a month, but you could teach your kids these valuable lessons, it would be worth everything. Okay, I want to jump into a couple of surprises here. A couple surprises that we had. One I already talked about, which was this whole idea of budgeting. My kids had no idea, they didn't understand it, and they also didn't understand the savings portion of that as to when they would need the money and how much they had to put in so that they would have enough money there based upon the time frame that they would actually need it, like the church clothes or the school clothes, those types of things. The other thing that was a big surprise for me was just the whole cash management. How they actually manage their cash and what they did. What I have learned is my wife and I, spent a lot more money on our kids than they are spending on themselves. Let me repeat that because that's really important. We took how much money we were spending on our kids, we divided that up, we put it into chores, and that's what we're paying them out, and then they're responsible for these things. You may want to do a deduction for like family stuff because we still pay for trips and those types of things. And then they are spending less money than we were spending on them. They're spending it differently. They're spending it on different things, but they're both spending less. And part of that is because they have ownership and they're taking care of it and they're making things last longer and they're buying what's important and not the other things. Because it's really easy to be like, oh yeah, my son would love this, they'd love this, they'd love this. Yeah, so then we go buy it, but then we take it home and they're like, oh yeah, that's cool. They don't wear it, they don't do this. Well, now it's, okay, this is yours. You buy what you want and you make it work. So that's the thing that has been shocking to me is my kids are getting a lot of money and it's saving up quick, which is awesome. But I'm spending the same amount of money I was, but now they're getting to make the choices. I've got some helpful links for you guys on the book and the accounting money holders and envelopes and cash boxes and all that type of stuff. Now, I'm probably saying, okay, Ryan, now how do I then put these chores together? Well, I can help you with that. So we've broken our items for chores or for pay. Jobs is what we're calling them. We're calling it jobs. It's a job. We're paying you to do it. We've broken them down to 3 categories. Okay, the first category we have is required, and you have to do this and you don't get paid. So for us, it was you got to help out when asked, set the table, put up the groceries, do your personal laundry, clean your own bathroom, clean and organize your bedroom, do personal practice. So if they're doing any type of a lesson, like a basketball lesson, well, we expect them to practice. We expect them to participate in family council. We expect them to participate in those things. And that is just something where it's like, you have to do that, okay? That's not like something you choose to do, you have to do that. And if you don't do the required, you are not eligible for pay for anything else, okay? You can't get paid for anything else. And then cleaning up Sunday dinner, dishes, that type of stuff. We'll clean up from family dinner Sunday and other days, okay? Then what we said is, okay, now we're gonna have some things, you don't get paid for any of those things. Now we're gonna have some things you get paid for, but you have to do those first before you can get paid for other things. So for example, it's the dishwasher, unloading the dishes, cleaning the table, picking up the dog poop, those types of things where it's like, you know what? If they have the ability to make money, they're gonna do other things to make money rather than those things to make money. But those things are important to us, so we're gonna say, this has to be done first before you can earn other money. So that's why we have the required, you don't get paid, you have to do that or you're not eligible. Then we've got the, you have to do first and you do get paid, and you have to do those before you can do the other things. And then we get into our section is paid after everything else is done. I can show you a few things on here that might be helpful. So projects with mom and dad. It's like, hey, I'm gonna go fix the tire. If you come help me do that, I'll give you $5. You're like, that's to be determined. Handyman with dad, that's to be determined. Organizing the garage, that's to be determined. Cleaning the refrigerator, wiping down, doing all that type of stuff. Okay, maybe you wanna do that once a week. Maybe you wanna do it twice a week, how much you're willing. Mowing, picking up the poop for the dog, getting and sorting the mail, vacuuming the main level, vacuuming the upstairs, mop, prepare a meal. We help them at this point, but eventually they'll be preparing the meal on their own. Brush and floss teeth. Yes, I have boys. Yes, this seems to always be a problem, so we pay them for it. I know that may sound ridiculous, and maybe for you that's a required item. For us, this has worked out better to pay them. Yard work, snow removal, take the trash out, set out the outdoor furniture, wipe down, vacuum out our car, wash their sheets, pick up all the shoes, dog food, water, lessons, exercise, deep clean, washing the windows, washing the microwave, hanging decorations, anything you can think of that you would like help with to get done, you put it on here and allow your kids to do that. So for example, I know some people that have swimming pools, right? And they spend an exorbitant amount of money to have somebody come and check the chemicals and do that type of stuff. If I had a swimming pool, I would be teaching my boys how to do that. I would be adding it to this list, and then I would be paying them, and I'd be paying them less than I'd be paying the pool guy, they'd be making money, they'd be doing a good job. That would be a win-win for everybody in the family. So those are things. So you basically just make a big long list of what are all the things we want to see done with our family so that we can make sure that we get those things accomplished. And as you go, you can add more things to this list as well, where it's like, hey, you know what? I just thought of something new. Great, add it to the list. So then what we did is we took this list, and then we have 2 kids, so we divided it up because we wanted to make sure the workload was there. And then we also made determinations. Is this something that's done daily? Is this something that's done weekly? Is this something that's done multiple times a week? So we played with that, okay? Then how much are we spending on the kids was the first thing. What are we spending, not including vacations and those types of things? So we knew what our budget was so that we could then put these together. This is a weekly log. It's got the month. Let me actually zoom out of this so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so it's got the month. Our weeks go from Sunday to Saturday. This is the month, and these are the days of the week. So there's a place for completed and approved. So they initial here, and then we initial. Helping when asked. We're going to initial that. They're going to initial that. That is required. They don't get paid. Setting up the table, required. Don't get paid. Putting up groceries, required. Personal laundry, required. Cleaning a bathroom, required. Cleaning and organizing bed, required. Sunday dinner, required. Practice is required if they're going to do a lesson, right? 4 times a week for 30 minutes when we pay for private lessons. If you don't want to take private lessons, then you don't have to practice. But you also may be in a family where you're just like, it's really important to me that my kids learn an instrument. Great, then put that in here, decide what that is, and make that a part of it. So these things are required. If you do not do these things, you cannot get paid anything, which is going to kind of suck because you're responsible for paying for your clothes and you're responsible for paying for haircuts. You're responsible for paying for all that type of stuff. You won't have money to pay for those things. So these get done. Then we have, this has to get done before you can get paid for other things. So we pay for this, but it has to be done before you make money below. So unloading the dishwasher, one of my sons does it 3 days a week. The other one does 3 days a week. Cleaning and mopping 3 days a week. The other one 3 days. Picking up dog poop a couple times a week. So they have dollar amounts here. I took those out because they're going to be different for every family. These things are going to be different. For one family, it's like, yeah, I'm willing to pay money to brush my kid's teeth, and somebody else is gonna be like, no. So this is really individualized. So I don't want to put numbers in your head. It's gonna be so different. And you work backwards on this, okay? The backwards being, what are we currently spending? What do we want done? Then you start dividing those up, and then you start putting dollar amounts to those, and you weight things more that are more important, and you weight things less that are less, or you make more things required. That's kind of up to you. You guys need to make those decisions, okay? Then, once they've done these things, then they can do all of these things, which we have, okay? So, I should take that out. Okay, so then they can do all of these things. Each one of these has a dollar amount associated with it, and it's going to have a day here. Okay, that'll make it easier. Okay, so it's going to have all of that. Now, this is weekly. Let's just say prepare snacks. We're only going to let them do it once a week. So there's not going to be a sign off for every day. There's just going to be one day that signs off on that. However, walking the dog could be done every single day where they're going to sign it and we're going to sign it. Having a positive attitude and not complaining is something that we pay for. That maybe for you that's a requirement. For us, it's worked better to pay. That tells you the weekly total, your monthly total, and your annual total. This was really important because our kids need to realize I have more than enough money to do the things that I need to. And I know that because I'm already spending the money and I'm giving them that money. So it works out, especially if you get into the budgeting. Now, these are some other things that they can do, like yard work, if we're doing a bunch of yard work. Now, sometimes we're going to just do yard work as a family and expect it. Other times we're going to say, hey, if you mow the lawn, if you do the furniture, if you take down the Christmas stuff, we'll pay you X number of dollars, holiday decorations, and we are constantly adding to these lists. Anything we can think of that we want our kids to be doing, things that they could be doing for us, we add it. And then we weight what makes sense based upon what we want to incentivize and require what we don't. Now, there's a little bit different for both my kids because they have different activities depending upon what day of the week. There are some similarities as well. And so then I make one of these. So then what happens is every single week on Sundays, I print this off. It's on a one page. They carry it around. It's got their name on it. We initial, they get stuff done, we check off on it, and then on Sunday it comes to payday. They bring this in on Sunday, they meet with my wife then goes through and she's typically the ones that's signing off on most of these things, talks about attitude, talks about behavior, talks about, the willingness and those types of things, having to be asked a second time. It's kind of a time to talk about those things and say, hey, you know what, I noticed this week that I had to ask you, and that's not something I'm supposed to be doing. I'll let it fly for this week, but next week, if I have to ask you again, we're not going to get paid for that item. So it's a coaching, it's a developing, it's a talking, and then they get paid. Now, I'll tell you, early on, there was a lot of tears. There's not as many tears now because they understand the system. They understand they can't complain. They understand those things, and they understand it's going to work for them, and they're going to have the money that they need. They also love it, by the way. It just takes some time for them to burn into it. And so then they're going to do that. Then they're going to get paid. Then they come to dad. And what dad does is help them with the budget. So they're saying, okay, you got this much money. How much money should you put here? How much money should you put there? Because the time frame of when they're going to need to buy things throws them off a little bit. If they could buy everything 12 months from now, then they knew they could put X number of dollars every single weekend, and that would get them there. But there's time frame. They're going to need to buy school clothes in 2 months rather than a year, so they need to put more money into there. So I help them with that. I help them with the ledgers. They do a lot of it themselves. First time I did quite a bit. They're doing more and more and more and more. Next thing that we're getting into is this whole principle of having extra money, rainy day savings. So now when my kids have money, they've got it all in there. Now it's like, okay, let's talk about reserves. Let's say you get sick. Let's say that you're sick for 2 weeks and you don't make any money during those 2 weeks, because we're not just going to pay you. You have to do it in order to get paid. It would be wise to have an extra month or 2 or 3 in these accounts so that if you do get sick, you don't get behind, okay? So then we set a goal. How many months? One of my sons, I think, is at 2. One of my sons wants 3 months. But the idea is I'm working towards having 3 months for all of these categories. I'm already keeping 20% for investing. Keep in mind, off the top, the 20% for investing. Any additional funds I can then put into this account, which is the leftover future big purchases, new bike. I can take that money and put it into the saving and get my saving match. However, it does not come out of there unless it's for college, house, or what's the other one? Car, college, house. Okay, that's the only thing it can come out for. But they could do that, or they could say, I want to buy a Nintendo, and so I'm going to spend the time. I'm going to save that type of stuff up. Now, just because they buy the Nintendo doesn't mean they can use it all the time, because that's part of our family rules as well. That can get built into your family rules. Okay, and then after we do that, we usually celebrate because it's usually pretty awesome. Then what happens is they go back to mom and they take the money either for their charity or their tithing, and they give it to her. That then refills the box. And then she goes online and pays it out of our account. So it gets paid, but then we recoup some of that cash so we can pay it out for the next week. The other things is the savings and investing. They give that to us. We make a transfer from our bank account into the high yield savings. And then we take that money and put it back in so we have it available to give it to them next week. And so those are the other things that are going to happen on that day as well. And sometimes we'll also talk about investments. So I try and give my kids investment opportunities. So if there's an investment that I'm investing in, I'll say, hey, I invested in this week. Do you want to put some money into it? I can show them what it is, the pros, the cons, let them make a decision. Yes, they have invested in loans that you have done. And so that's awesome, but I don't cover them. If it goes bad, if there's problems, if they don't get paid, that's just part of life and part of investing, and it's a decision that they need to make. So let's just do a quick recap here. The whole concept here is to take the amount of money that you are currently spending on your kids and give it to them by doing activities. Some of those may be required without pay, and others are paid. The reason that we're doing this is we want to have financially fiscal responsibility kids that grow up to be financial great adults as well, and we know how important finances is in the overall perspective of life. It's so much of life, and it causes so many problems, and it causes so much good. We want to know how to take care of both of those. Okay, so the reason why, and we're also doing that because we want them to take ownership of the things that they have. We don't want them to be excited about putting a shoe down a river to see how fast it floats and then be like, oh, mom's just gonna buy a new one. Now they actually take ownership, they take better care of it. Our basketballs aren't staying out overnight because they don't wanna have to buy a new one, and so they're making sure they're being brought in. Those are the types of things. You're not gonna see the scooter left out at night and be like, why didn't you put this up? Well, they didn't put it up because they don't have any ownership on it, and they know you'll buy another one. Even if you say, I'm not gonna buy another one if you do this, they're like, whatever, because you always do. And now they own it, and now it's theirs, and they're saying, no, I want to take really good care of this. So we're doing that, and we're also doing that to develop financial principles, budgeting principles, fiscal responsibilities, saving, investing, gratitude, charity. And this is a system I'm really excited about. It's been working really well for us. You're gonna have to make modifications. You're gonna have to make tweaks. You're gonna have to change things as you go. You're gonna have to be flexible. The one piece of advice I would say is this should be coaching. It should not be discipline. We really want to be coaching, and discipline is kind of a last resort. But we want to do lots of coaching as you burn into this, and it does take effort and it does take time. But once you get up and running, it takes a lot less time, and I believe that the benefits more than outweigh any time as to what we're teaching our kids and what we're teaching ourselves. Appreciate you being with me today as we talk about the family economy. I've got some forms that you can download and tools that you can use. Make sure you pick those up and make it a very profitable day.